Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today's spring statement will showcase a government going further and faster on the economy, green-lighting the Lower Thames crossing, investing £2 million for 18,000 affordable homes for working families, 60,000 young people being trained the next generation of construction workers, and fixing millions of potholes. We're undoing a decade of stagnation, delivering jobs and opportunities for working people and securing Britain's future.
The political landscape in the United Kingdom has been significantly shaken by a ruling that has placed Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, under extreme scrutiny. The Chief Justice delivered a landmark verdict that could potentially end Starmer's time as Prime Minister, sparking widespread controversy and public outrage. What began as a behind-the-scenes issue has now escalated into a full-scale crisis, threatening the very core of Starmer's leadership. The ruling has unveiled a series of scandals that go far beyond mere political blunders, raising alarm about corruption at the highest levels of government. The Chief Justice's verdict has reverberated throughout the political establishment, as it reveals that the issue is not just about administrative failures, but about a breach of trust and integrity within the government. Under Starmer's leadership, the Labour Party is now at the centre of a corruption scandal involving billions of pounds in public funds. The public's reaction has been swift and unrelenting, with many viewing this ruling as a final nail in the coffin of Starmer's credibility. What began as rumours of financial mismanagement has now been exposed as a much more severe issue. The ruling doesn't just question Starmer's competence, but directly implicates him in a systemic breakdown that has eroded the public's trust. Once seen as the leader who could bring Labour back into power, Starmer now faces mounting calls for his resignation. The gravity of the situation is amplified by the fact that the Chief Justice's decision is not only a legal blow, but a political shockwave that could change the UK's leadership. While Starmer's supporters within the Labour Party are desperately defending him, the damage may already be irreversible. With protests erupting nationwide and growing demands for accountability, the public's patience with Labour is rapidly waning. The ruling has not only placed Starmer's future in jeopardy, but also cast doubt on the Labour Party's ability to regain public trust. This is no longer just a matter of leadership, it's about whether the party can survive such a massive scandal. As time passes, it becomes increasingly clear that Starmer's position as Prime Minister is becoming more precarious. The political battle is just beginning, and it remains uncertain who will ultimately come out on top in this legal and political storm. The Chief Justice's ruling has laid the groundwork for a dramatic shift in British politics, with lasting consequences for Starmer, the Labour Party, and the future of the nation. The Chief Justice's ruling has sparked an unprecedented political firestorm, exposing a vast corruption scandal involving Keir Starmer and his Labour government. The public and political spheres were left in shock as the verdict revealed a staggering £22 billion in missing taxpayer money under Starmer's leadership. Once viewed as a promising leader in British politics, Starmer now finds himself at the heart of a scandal of catastrophic proportions, one that has severely shaken the government's foundations. The scale of the financial misconduct is so extensive that it threatens not only Starmer's leadership, but also the long-standing position of the Labour Party in British politics. The missing £22 billion, which was meant to fund public services, infrastructure, and social programs, has instead been funneled into questionable contracts, backdoor deals, and potentially fraudulent activities. This revelation has sent shockwaves across the nation, with many questioning how such a massive sum of public funds could disappear under the Prime Minister's watch. The corruption's impact is further compounded by the fact that the money was supposed to improve vital public services that directly affect the daily lives of ordinary citizens. As inflation continues to erode people's wages, the notion that such a colossal sum could vanish is not just alarming, but also infuriating. The Chief Justice's ruling has stripped away the illusion of competence and integrity that Starmer's government once projected. What was initially seen as political mismanagement has now been exposed as a deliberate systemic failure that has left the British public in disbelief. The Labour Party, long touted as the defender of the working class, now faces a credibility crisis of monumental proportions. Starmer's attempts to deflect blame and minimize the situation have only intensified public disillusionment. His leadership is under intense scrutiny, with growing calls for accountability and transparency. The government's failure to provide either has led to a rapid erosion of public trust, and the Labour Party's reputation is collapsing, In the aftermath of the ruling, protests have erupted in cities across the UK, with thousands demanding Starmer's immediate resignation. The public's frustration is palpable, with many feeling deeply betrayed by a government that was supposed to serve their interests. As more details of the scandal unfold, the full extent of the corruption becomes clearer, and Starmer's position grows more untenable. The Chief Justice's ruling has not only exposed financial misconduct, but has also cast a long, dark shadow over the future of the Labour Party. With public support quickly eroding, it remains uncertain whether the party can ever recover from this catastrophic leadership failure. The Chief Justice's ruling has sent shockwaves through the British political system, exposing a level of corruption within Keir Starmer's government that few could have anticipated. What began as murmurs of financial mismanagement has now exploded into a full-blown crisis, one that threatens not just Starmer's leadership, but the very future of the Labour Party. Initially perceived as a political blunder, the situation has now been unveiled as a deliberate, systemic failure that endangers the country's governance. The staggering $22 billion sterling that has disappeared is not just a number. It symbolizes a breach of trust that undermines the public's faith in their government. This money, originally allocated for essential public services, infrastructure, and citizen welfare, has instead vanished into an abyss of questionable contracts and dubious financial maneuvers. The repercussions of the Chief Justice's verdict are profound, confirming that Starmer's government didn't just mishandle public funds, it engaged in outright financial misconduct, betraying the very people it was meant to serve. The ruling has placed the full responsibility for the scandal on Starmer's shoulders, triggering a political earthquake that is shaking the foundations of the Labour Party. The loss of £22 billion sterling is not just a fiscal disaster. It is a violation of the principles of transparency and accountability that are vital to any functioning democracy. For months, Starmer and his team dismissed the allegations, branding them as politically motivated attacks. However, the Chief Justice's decision has shattered that narrative, leaving the Labour Party struggling to retain any semblance of credibility. The ruling also implicates senior Labour figures, including Deputy Leader Angela Rayner, who has been tied to the cover-up of financial irregularities, further deepening the crisis. Her involvement has raised serious questions about her continued leadership role. What was once a party known for advocating for the working class is now bogged down by a scandal that threatens its very existence. As public outrage grows, the calls for Starmer's resignation intensify. Protests have erupted across the nation, with citizens demanding that the government take responsibility for its actions. Labour MPs who once supported Starmer are now distancing themselves, aware that their association with the scandal could cost them their political careers. The public's trust in Labour is quickly fading, and Starmer's hold on power is loosening by the hour. The ruling has made it painfully clear that the government has betrayed the British people on a scale that was previously unimaginable. With each passing day, the crisis worsens, and it remains uncertain whether the Labour Party can recover from this catastrophic blow. The fallout from the Chief Justice's ruling is far from over, and the future of the Labour Party is hanging by a thread. The crisis surrounding Keir Starmer's leadership has reached a boiling point, with public trust in the Labour Party rapidly diminishing. Following the Chief Justice's ruling, which revealed the staggering loss of £22 billion sterling in taxpayer money, the political landscape has been irrevocably altered. This scandal has not only shaken the Labour Party, but has raised serious questions about the integrity of the UK government itself. For many, the scandal is a betrayal of both the people and the core values that Labour once championed. Protests have erupted across the country, with citizens demanding accountability and Starmer's immediate resignation. It is evident that his credibility has been irreparably damaged, and the Labour Party's future is now hanging in the balance. Once seen as a steady and reliable force in British politics, Labour is now embroiled in a crisis of trust that threatens to undo its decades of influence. Starmer's refusal to confront the severity of the situation has only intensified public frustration, fueling demands for his departure. The loss of £22 billion sterling is not just a mistake, it's a catastrophic failure that has put the UK's economy at risk. The scale of the financial mismanagement has left many questioning how it could have been allowed to happen under Starmer's leadership. Worse still, it appears this scandal is not an isolated incident, but part of a broader pattern of poor decision-making and negligence within the Labour leadership. As more details emerge, it becomes increasingly clear that the crisis is far from a series of isolated mistakes. It's a systemic failure that has left the country vulnerable to the actions of its own leaders, A government once trusted to serve the people now stands accused of betraying them. The recent revelations suggest that Labour's financial mismanagement wasn't just accidental, but rather a deliberate attempt to funnel public money into questionable contracts and projects. These actions have severely damaged the party's reputation, and the road to redemption seems increasingly distant. The growing calls for Starmer's resignation only highlight the growing sense of frustration. His attempts to hold on to power seem increasingly futile as the scandal deepens. The Chief Justice's ruling has become a defining moment, confirming that Starmer's government was not just financially reckless, but morally compromised as well. The public's patience has worn thin, and it is becoming more apparent that drastic changes are needed within Labour if the party is to have any chance of recovering. However, with the party divided and public disillusionment continuing to rise, the path forward is uncertain and fraught with challenges. The political crisis surrounding Keir Starmer has now reached its peak, with its leadership under intense scrutiny and the Labour Party's credibility in shambles. The Chief Justice's ruling, which exposed the extent of financial mismanagement and corruption within Starmer's government, has ignited a firestorm of public outrage. As more details of the scandal surface, it is clear that the Labour Party's leadership has failed not only in managing public finances, but also in maintaining the trust of the British people. The £22 billion that has vanished is more than just a financial error. It is a deep betrayal of the electorate. For months, the Labour Party tried to downplay the gravity of the situation, dismissing accusations as politically motivated attacks. However, the Chief Justice's verdict has shattered this narrative, leaving Starmer with little room to maneuver. The public's frustration is tangible, with widespread calls for his resignation reverberating throughout the country. What was once a united party now faces internal division. Senior Labour figures are resigning or distancing themselves from Starmer, unwilling to be dragged down by the scandal that continues to unfold. This internal collapse is a clear sign that Labour's confidence, both internally and externally, is quickly unraveling. Starmer's refusal to confront the reality of the crisis is making matters worse. His optimistic stance on economic recovery, while ideal in theory, sounds increasingly hollow in the face of overwhelming evidence of financial mismanagement. The promises of rising wages and economic growth, which once gave hope to working-class families, are now seen as nothing more than empty words. While Starmer and his allies insist the economy is improving, the reality for millions of households paints a different picture. Rising inflation, stagnant wages, and soaring living costs have left working families struggling to survive. The Labour Party, once the champion of the working class, is now seen as part of the problem rather than the solution. With each passing day, it becomes clearer that Starmer's leadership is failing to meet the needs of the people. The once dominant Labour Party is now bogged down by scandal, unable to offer meaningful solutions to the pressing issues facing the public. The situation has worsened to the point where even the monarchy, typically neutral in political matters, is being drawn into the conversation. Reports suggest that King Charles, angered by the financial misconduct, may take unprecedented steps to address the crisis. While the monarchy's role in politics is traditionally minimal, sources indicate that the king could use his influence to urge Starmer to resign. With mounting public discontent and increasing pressure within his own party, Starmer is being pushed closer to the edge. It remains to be seen whether he will cling to power or face the resignation that seems inevitable. What is certain is that this scandal has irreparably altered the political landscape of the UK. Labour's future now hangs in the balance, with public trust shattered and the road to rebuilding it looking incredibly steep. The once unassailable leadership of Starmer is now precarious, and only time will reveal whether he can weather the storm, or if his leadership will fall as a result of this devastating scandal. Keir Starmer's leadership is now in freefall, as the Labour Party faces a crisis of unprecedented proportions. The scandal surrounding missing £22 billion, combined with mounting allegations of financial misconduct, has severely damaged public confidence in Starmer and his government. The Chief Justice's ruling has exposed the scale of mismanagement, and with every new revelation, the pressure on Starmer continues to mount. His attempts to deny or deflect the growing concerns have only alienated those who once believed in his leadership. Starmer's insistence that things are improving, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, has deepened public disillusionment. The reality for millions of Britons is one of rising costs, stagnant wages, and rampant inflation. issues that Starmer's leadership seems ill-equipped to address. As the crisis deepens, many Labour MPs are distancing themselves from Starmer, unwilling to be associated with the scandal that has gripped the party. Senior members are resigning, and the disarray within Labour is becoming more apparent by the day. The need for a leadership change is becoming increasingly inevitable. Amid this chaos, the monarchy is reportedly becoming involved in the situation, signalling the possibility of even higher stakes. With public trust in Labour at an all-time low, the question now is who will step in to repair the damage caused by Starmer's failed leadership. The future of the Labour Party depends on its ability to regain public trust and address the issues that have led to its downfall. See you soon!